Okay, thank you everyone for joining this short webinar on sharing insights, where we will share some practical strategies and tips for an effective dissemination of evaluation results. As Taylor mentioned, it's being recorded, but there will be no names or images, and we'll stop the recording before the Q&A.
So I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. We are meeting today on a virtual platform, but I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we each call home. And from coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded traditional territories of the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people who call this land home. Our acknowledgement of this truth is but a small part in honoring and showing respect for the diverse histories and cultures of Indigenous peoples in Canada. And we'd also like to acknowledge the colonial structures and the impact that it has on all of our work in the settlement area.
My name is Ona Benchis-Raffles. I'm a researcher with SRDC and part of the Prospects project team. My colleague Audrey will give a short presentation on Power BI later in this webinar. Audrey, if you want to change slides. So before we get into some tips and best practices, I just want to go over kind of why it's so important to share results. And it might seem obvious, but sometimes so much planning and kind of effort goes into the data collection and then getting the results that actually sharing those results becomes a bit of an afterthought. But sharing those insights is really crucial because so for example, you can show clients and participants that their feedback was heard and taken seriously. You could give recommendations and reallocate resources to staff to improve programs or services. You can show staff the positive impacts of their work, demonstrate the importance of the program to funders, or spread awareness of your services or program in the community. In order to have an effective dissemination strategy, you need to be really intentional. For those who attended our last webinar, you'll remember we talked about the differences between outputs and outcomes. If you missed that webinar, there's a recording link that will be shared in the chat in case you're interested. So let's pretend we were conducting an evaluation of someone's knowledge dissemination strategy. If you're going to measure the outputs, you might be tracking the number of emails sent or the presentations done. Whereas if you were to look at kind of the outcomes, depending on your goals, this might be, that staff applies recommended changes, or that the community feels heard, or funders understand the importance of the program. But it's really important to kind of have a clear idea of the outcome you're trying to achieve in order to tailor your strategy to it. So this slide just kind of gives some prompts for developing your dissemination strategy. The first question would probably be to think about who you're trying to reach. And this could be really specific. It could be that you're trying to reach maybe newcomer women from Southeast Asia, right? Or maybe you're trying to convince Kim, Julie, and Audrey on your team of why we need to apply certain changes. Just, tailor your strategy to the people that you're really trying to reach. Then you also want to think about why you're presenting the information, what you want them to remember most. And all of this can really help you decide what format is going to be the most suitable. An additional consideration might be asking when is a good time to share results, right? Is there a time of year that's busier or more stressful? Everyone's on vacation. Those might be times you want to avoid in terms of sharing results. If you're a larger organization and you have a communications team, then work closely with them to develop the strategy, making sure it's you're tailoring your key message to your target audience. In the following slides, we'll give some ideas of how to share results with different types of audiences, but it's important to remember that these are generalizations. Everyone's audience will be a bit different, so figure out what works best for your specific community. In order to do that, kind of the best way is just to, every time you share results, reflect on what got people engaged and listening, and then each time it will be better. So let's say you want to share the results of your evaluation with the community or maybe clients you serve. You might want to consider a workshop where you can kind of interpret the results and discuss them with community members. That might bring some really interesting insights. Maybe your organization provides employment assistance, to newcomers or skills training to newcomer youth. So maybe you could use the evaluation results as part of a data literacy training. This is kind of more interactive and also gives clients useful skills. You could explore interactive data, maybe some online maps on your website or dashboards like the one Audrey will share later. You could also create some videos to share on social media that could help kind of promote your services. Again, this really depends on your clients. So maybe if you're an umbrella organization that we have some in the group here, it might be relevant to present your findings at conferences, for example. It's really going to depend. Some of the recommendations for sharing with frontline staff are similar to the previous slide, workshops or training, for example. But if you're giving recommendations on practices that staff should change, it's really important to make sure these are accompanied by the resources they need in order to actually make that change. It's also important to show staff the positive impact of their work. You could do that through videos, for example, and you can create dashboards to help everyone keep track of the organization's progress. Again, wait for Audrey. And remember that frontline staff are the ones kind of collecting the data from clients, so they should feel involved and engaged with the learnings that come from that data. Reports are a really valuable way of sharing results because they have the space to kind of go more into depth, more into detail. But the following kind of examples on the slide are valuable additions when you're communicating to funders or stakeholder organizations. This could maybe also apply if you're trying to reach government departments for advocacy reasons. But whether you're creating an infographic, a one-page summary, videos, presentations, in each case, just make sure that you're focusing on a key message, right? There can be so much, kind of interesting and important findings that come from an evaluation, and we want to include it all. We want to share it, but try to only include what is most useful and most relevant to that specific audience. Adding visual elements to report, infographic, briefing note, presentation or blog post can really help engage your audience. You can work with a graphic designer, which is a great investment, but we know not everyone has that capacity. So, don't be afraid to get creative and make use of what you have. We have some tips here. So there's, free stock photo inventories that you can use. You can also, see if there's someone on your team or in your community who actually likes to draw. And it really doesn't have to be, a polished kind of perfect drawing in order to be effective and really engaging. And we've kind of linked some examples there. I won't get too deep into talking about graphs and data visualization here because we don't have time. But one tip I would give is to avoid the pie chart. It's kind of become a go-to chart, but its effectiveness is really limited to a couple of situations. So I have a kind of resource here that I find really useful. I use it a lot, and it kind of helps you explore some alternatives and figure out what is most suited to your data. A last tip is to find a free template. If you're not a graphic designer, it can be really hard to design a layout from scratch. So, find one that you like and then make it your own by changing the illustrations, colors, fonts, or photos. This can be a lot easier way to have an attractive poster or presentation, for example. So to give some examples of what we mean, here are some infographics. One is from Statistics Canada. The second one is from the Toronto Region Immigrant Employment Council, and then Smart Ice. And I'd actually really interested in hearing some of your reactions to them. So if you want to put in the chat kind of what you think works well in these infographics or what you feel could actually be improved, that would be great. I find, for example, we can stay on that slide just 1 second longer in case anyone has any thoughts. But one thing that I really like is that if you look at the Statistics Canada infographic, it's actually just it's really like a simple bar chart, but because they've added kind of these colors and illustrations and key findings, that it's much more engaging to read through as a viewer. And we can go to the next slide, Audrey. So we have an example of a brief that was created for the Career Pathways for Racialized Newcomer Women pilot, a pilot project developed by SRDC and funded by IRCC. You can see that we tried to keep this really focused to the key lesson and its implications, but we added photographs and broke up the text with color boxes. So it's just an example of kind of adding visual elements to what is maybe a text heavier format. Next slide. So this is an example of a video that I think is really effective at communicating the struggles faced by immigrant women in the labor market. And so I will play just a minute of it. Go ahead, Audrey.
I am a STEM professional, and I can't get the job I'm trained for and experienced in. My career was well established when I immigrated here. I was ready for a new challenge, and I'd done my research. Canada needs skilled workers. Canada welcomes my expertise. I checked off all the boxes. But once I got here, where were the opportunities I was promised? It's as if Canada no longer cared about my success. When I landed, a settlement agency took over my file. My caseworker was going to help me get a job, and she tried. I soon discovered that meant any job. When I didn't get any callbacks, she told me to make my profile more friendly to employers and crossed off the PhD from my CV. Where were those employers? I sent out so many CVs. Most of the time, all I got was silence. No feedback, no reason given. How do I make sense of this cold shoulder after the warm welcome?
Thank you, Audrey. And I'm going to give one more example of a video that's very different. Is from SRDC and from the Career Pathways for Racialized Newcomer Women. And it's just kind of give you an idea of you can have a really different approach kind of on similar topics.
The targeted programming helped provide a space for participants to be vulnerable and to feel a sense of belonging. They can share and talk about issues that they may not be comfortable sharing in employment programs with men.
Bringing the women together, that's a safe environment for women to see others who are also in the same situation. Also to be able to talk about their specific issue. That is really specific issue to gender, to other social pressures that they might have, to be able to talk about that in a safe environment.
They realized that there are other women who are in a similar positions that they can relate to, that other women may have similar challenges, whether it's a childcare or travel or language, or a language is not coming fast enough, and what am I going to do about this? And they started sharing the resources, the information. I heard this, I heard that. Oh, there is this program, there is this resource in the community, and so on. So they did become, to some extent, each other's supporters, cheering for each other when they have interviews, wishing each other good luck, kind of boosting each other's confidence and successes once they sort of leave the classroom and continue sort of building their life in the community. Many of these groups have formed their own sort of WhatsApp group and continue to collaborate and chat and ask each other questions or share information and so on.
You have one video kind of talking about the struggles of newcomer women and then some of the interventions that have been developed. So for this slide 13, thank you. Oh, there we go. So this was just an introduction. We wanted to give some kind of tips and some examples of how to share results of your evaluation, and I hope it inspired some new ideas for you going forward. We could only cover so much in a 10-15 minute presentation, but if there's interest in further webinars related to sharing insights, we would be really happy to dive deeper into some more specific topics. So, please let us know in the chat if you would be interested in a webinar on storytelling with quantitative data, for example, or presenting qualitative data, maybe using digital platforms for collaborative workshops. We've also done some projects using photo voice, which has made for some really interesting and engaging knowledge dissemination. So we would be happy to do a webinar on that as well. Or if there are any other topics you'd be interested in for future webinars, please also put that in the chat and we will note it down. So we've added some links in this slide to some guides that organizations and evaluators have created on how to share results. We'll be sharing these slides with you all so you can look through these in your own time if you're interested in more resources. And I will pass it over to my colleague Audrey to talk about Power BI.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Ona, for that. That was great. I think Ona did a lot of talking about a little bit about dashboards. So I will be talking to you about Power BI. And I will provide you with an introduction to Power BI, its interface, some potential benefits of using Power BI for your organization, some key considerations, examples of how to use it, and some resources to get you started. So what is Power BI? It's basically a data analysis and visualization tool. It is widely known for its flexible and user-friendly visualization features. Below the definition, I have an example of a dashboard created using Power BI. This is just to show you how it looks like, and we will dive more into examples later. So just to talk to you a bit about the advantages of using Power BI, like I already said, it is effective for data visualization and storytelling. It provides you with real-time insights by updating dashboards automatically as new data is added. This helps in identifying trends and helping you make timely decisions. You can customize dashboards by filtering or drilling down into specific groups or locations. This allows for targeted decision-making if it's of interest to you. Power BI makes collaboration easy, and staff and/or funders can work together on dashboards to ensure they contain relevant program information. So there are two main types of Power BI. There is a desktop version, and then there is an online version. Each version has its own strengths and limitations. So the desktop version is mostly free, and it's suitable for modeling and cleaning, as well as data analysis. If your organization has like a data analyst, they can integrate their syntax from Python or R for advanced analysis into Power BI. The interface is very user-friendly, and I'll show you later when I open Power BI. However, it is designed for individual use and lack collaboration features. The online version, however, supports collaboration, but it is less suitable for modeling or like the data analysis itself. It requires a paid subscription. So basically you need like using both the desktop and the online version together provides like a balanced solution so that you can get the full, the whole kind of utilization and features out of Power BI. On this slide. So next, I will talk to you about some steps to consider when you want to use Power BI. So before you upload any data into Power BI, you should consult your organization's data privacy officer if you have one, regarding any potential privacy concerns. And to build a dashboard, you should clearly define the evaluation question or the purpose of the dashboard. This will guide how you actually go about designing it. The next step will be then to upload the data into Power BI. You clean the data if it's needed. You can connect multiple data sets if you have multiple data sets. Then you can go ahead and create your visualization, which is, like I said earlier, the main feature that most people use Power BI for. And then you can share it with your team or funders or wherever you're creating the dashboard. So this is an example of a dashboard that we created for our CPRNW project with participants' data. And basically, you can see that with this dashboard, you can look at the number of participants in the data set, the year of birth, their country of birth, as well as marital status. And one interesting thing about this is if you have it in real time, the dashboard automatically updates whenever you add new data. So these numbers automatically updates over time, and it becomes easier for everybody to see it. Although Oda had said that we do not encourage that people overuse pie charts, this is one situation where we thought a pie chart can be useful for marital status. So now I'm going to switch over to Power BI Desktop and show you, demonstrate how to visualize the year of birth, which is this data here, this variable, using one of our data sets. Just a minute here to switch in between. So this is the interface of Power BI. Like I said, my objective is to create a dashboard with the year of birth. I already have my data uploaded in here. This is where the data goes. This is the visualization pane where you can choose the visuals. So I want to create, it's a bar chart. So I'm just going to click on the start bar chart, which shows up on my dashboard screen here. I'm then going to go ahead and look for the year of birth variable for my data set, which is this. I want it both on my X and Y axis. So select it, put it in my Y axis, and then put it in my X-axis as well. So you can see that I have all the year of birth for most of the participants showing up here, but it's right now showing up as counts. I want it as percentages, so I can change it into percentage of the grant. I can go in here to format my visual, and then I can add data labels, turn it on, and you can see that I have the data label showing, and I can expand this if this is the only thing I want to track over time on my dashboard. So expand the ends. So basically, this gives me an idea of how I can visualize this data on Power BI. Very simple and easy to use. And I'm going to switch back into my sequence. So on this slide, I have a simple, like an example of a simple dashboard that is publicly available to view online with immigration data showing the location of recent immigrants. We're going to share the slides with you, so you should have access to this. In terms of resources, we have a few things to get you started for those that are interested. There is a free trial of the online version of the Power BI that I spoke about that helps with collaboration. There is also a YouTube channel that offers helpful tutorials. We also have the link to a Microsoft training that provides a free beginner course for your organization to get started. And then there is a Udemy course for like an in-depth course that is provided at a fee. Lastly, we want you to continue to learn with us. So we have a few questions. We want to know, as organizations, how do you think Power BI can be useful to you? What are some of the challenges you can see with using it? You can put your responses in the chats. And lastly, would you be interested in a more in-depth webinar about Power BI? Let us know in the chat as well if this is something you might want. Basically, this ends my discussion. Thank you so much for joining us.